What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. It is Heart to Heart DFS, and today we have another NBA slate to break down for Draftkings. If you're new to my channel, if you could please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Do appreciate all the support. Thank you guys so much for 200 subs. We got there, I think it's 2 days ago, so I really appreciate all that, guys. Do greatly appreciate all the subs. Now we're on the road to 500, and I want to try to get there by the end of the playoffs. I think we can do it. So once again, thank you guys for the support. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you're new here, I make a bunch of different content related around the NBA, PGA, NFL, for Draftkings, as well as NBA Top Shot content, NFL All Day content, playoff prediction series that I just started today as well. So a lot of content to check out on my channel, so go look at it below. Now let's get into the Draftkings slate to breakdown for today. We have the play-in tournament, start of the playoffs. I'm pumped. We have the Cavs versus the Nets, and then the Clippers versus the Timberwolves. If we look at the spread, the Cavs-Nets game is, floating around the potential blowout risk game. 9.5 point favorites for the Nets, and the Clippers-Timberwolves should be a pretty good game. A little bit higher total for the game, and it's only a 3-point spread with the Timberwolves favored. So when it comes to this, we got Garland at the top, 9-6. They did play 4 days ago. Garland played 41 minutes. As we've seen this season, Garland's been an absolute beast. Can easily score the ball. Can have some really high ceiling games when it comes to the assists. And then is, able to get you a couple rebounds as well. So 9-6 for Garland in the spot against Brooklyn, who plays no defense. As we saw last playoffs, they play absolutely zero defense. They're just fine with just winning games by their offense. I don't know if the Cavs will win. As I said in my playoff prediction series, you should go check that out. But I just think it's way too tough of a situation for any of these Cleveland guys to beat KD and Kyrie. They would all have to have like a career game, all 5 of their starters or guys off the bench. I don't think that's going to happen. But in terms of DFS, do really like Garland at 9-6. Obviously, in the playoffs, the starters, it's going to be a tighter rotation. The starters are going to get probably at least 5 minutes each, depending on if they're playing good or they just really need them. They're going to get 5 more minutes each when it comes to their average minutes, just because it's playoffs. They want to win. So I think we're going to see Garland close to 41 minutes, maybe a tad more. I don't expect him to rest much. So at 9-6, I really like him in the spot. Allen is still out. Mobley's back. A lot of guys really like Mobley in this spot at 7-3. I mean, he did pretty decent against Brooklyn a couple of days ago. 17 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, played 34 minutes. I do think you can expect 35, if not close to the 40 minutes from Mobley. They're going to need him the whole game to want to stay close and even win it. So, I mean, it's a decent spot, decent salary for Mobley. I just don't know if I want to get there. I just think his ceiling is kind of capped around, 45 fantasy points. Maybe if he's doing extremely well, 50. But I just think he's priced right at 7,300. LeVert is more of just like a dart throw play. Probably will play close to 35, maybe closer to 40 minutes. It's just he's been very inconsistent with scoring, as Darius Garland has all the usage, and then they like to get Mobley involved, and Karras is just kind of like the third option, which is not what Karras is used to or good at. He's good at being the main guy, as we saw previously in previous years on the Nets or the Pacers when he was able to be the point guard, get all the run. He was putting up huge numbers. So I just think he's priced a little bit too high in this spot against the Nets. But he's one of those going to be low-owned tournament plays that if for some reason he does really well, it's going to win you a lot of money. Kevin Love probably will be popular today just because he put up 55 fantasy points in 15 minutes, which is unreal against the Bucks. Same thing as Karis LeVert. It's either one of those where he'll go off or he's going to tank your lineup. 6K isn't a bad price to pay for him. So if you're playing multiple lineups, I'd say throw Kevin Love in a few of them. But if you're doing one lineup, I don't know if you get there to 6K. It's not the best matchup against the Nets. Kevin Love's liability on defense, so I don't think you have to force that play today. Want to go to Lowry, get in the minutes. He can't score, but that's all he does. Doesn't do much, with the other peripheral stats, so he'll be capped at like 30, 35 fantasy points. I mean, that's not bad at 5'9", but I just don't like him in this matchup. Moses Brown minutes are down. Rondo could be interesting just because he's a veteran point guard, played in a ton of playoff series. I do think we could see maybe 15 to 20 minutes of Rondo off the bench, and at 3-9, I think that's worth a dart throw. Now, I'm not saying this is a guarantee. This is definitely a high risk, high reward play on Rondo, but I do think there is a good chance he plays a little bit, at least 15 minutes in this situation against the Nets, just because they don't need his veteran presence and his experience. And besides Garland, Mobley, and if Levert's hopefully hitting the shots, I mean, they're going to need someone to come off the bench to fill in that guard rotation, and I think it's going to be Rondo. You also look to take a shot on a guy like Seti. He only gets minutes when they're at the end of the season, when they're blowing out teams. Before that, he's floating between like either 8 minutes or 20 as of recently. But another guy you could take a shot at 3,700. Minutes are not a guarantee. He will be in the rotation, but it could be one of those where he plays 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe 15. And if he does that, I don't think he's worth it at 3,700. You need him to play more to 20 minutes, 25. And you need him to be aggressive, which I do think in this spot, it could happen. If this game gets a little out of hand, they're going to look to guys like Seti, Rajan, and maybe Karis LeVert to try to get some buckets, score. And so I do think those guys are worth taking a shot on. Brooklyn side, KD and Kyrie look amazing at the top. KD's almost priced to that point where it's hard to get him because there's not a lot of value in the playoffs. Just because it's tighter rotations, they're not playing guys off the bench as much. But I do really like both of them in the spot. I'd give this slight edge to Kyrie just because of the price difference, but KD is a little bit more safer when it comes to terms of a safer floor. Both have an extremely high ceiling. Drummond's one of those guys where you just don't know his minutes. Even in 20 minutes, he got 20 and 13 with 2 blocks, 41 in fantasy points, 6'5", great price for him. I'd almost prefer him over Mobley, even though Drummond's minutes are limited and probably not as high as Mobley's. But he's a great point per minute guy. It's just the minutes, as I've always said with Drummond. We don't know if he's going to get 20 minutes or if he's going to get, closer to 30. I mean, Cleveland is slightly big with Mobley, with Kevin Love, so maybe Drummond gets a little bit more run. But as we see, they're not afraid to throw out guys like LaMarcus for some scrub minutes. He hasn't really played recently, but I can see him playing in the playoffs just because of that experience. A guy like Claxton, maybe he gets some run. So it's just very risky playing Drummond, but I do think it pays off in the situation against the Cavs. Bruce Brown, we really love him today in this spot. Going to play close to 40 minutes. Pretty good score just because of KD and Kyrie getting doubled. Bruce Brown is a good cutter, slips to the rim, gets a bunch of dunks, easy layups, likes to board hard, just a high energy guy, as we've seen the past 2-3 years from Bruce Brown. So really like him in this spot against the Cavs. I think he's a great play at 5'8", can pretty much do it all. And it really helps with KD and Kyrie being on the team, breaking men down, throwing it off to Bruce Brown, who can easily get a layup or a dunk, even hit some shots. So do really like Bruce Brown. Seth is a guy you could definitely take a dart throw on. I mean, as I always say, he's score independent. So even if he's hitting his shots, 35 minutes, 13 shots, only 16 points, 21 fantasy points, I just think you really need him to be hitting a good amount of shots, all his threes. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it going to him at 4-4. But at salary relief, it's not bad. Dragic, he's in. It's just said he doesn't know how many minutes he's going to play tonight, so it's very risky playing him. But I do think they're going to at least play him, I'd say 20, if not closer to his minutes of 30. I just don't know if I trust the headlines of him saying he doesn't know how many minutes he's going to play. It's the playoffs. He's a veteran point guard. They're going to need him. They're going to want him. He's been doing way better than Patty Mills recently, so I do like Dragic in the spot at 4-2. I don't trust the headlines. I think I'm going to roll him out there, even with them saying they're not sure how many minutes he'll play tonight. As I mentioned, you can definitely take a shot on a guy like I'd say I'd rather go to Claxton over Aldridge, but with the playoffs, maybe they give the edge to Aldridge over Claxton just because Aldridge has the experience. Other than that, I don't think I'd get to anyone else on this team. It's kind of just the two at the top, KD, Kyrie, then Bruce Brown, and then taking a shot at a guy like Drummond. On the Clippers-Minnesota side, should be a great game. Excited for this one. Paul George looks great at 9-9. Should see... He's been on a minutes limit since he's been back the past 3 games, but 4 games, I should say. 5, sorry. He's been close to around like 32, 33 minutes, but I think in this game, win or go home, you can expect to see probably 40 minutes out of Paul George. And in that spot when he's averaging, 2 steals per game, about 6 assists, about 7 rebounds, and 24 points, I think it's too hard not to play him in the spot against the Timberwolves. I don't know why my computer's freezing. Sorry about that. So I do really like Paul George in this spot. Reggie Jackson, more of a secondary play for me. Should see probably closer to 35, 40 minutes off the bench. Hasn't done much the past 2 games just because there really wasn't any, needing or meaning to, do well. I don't mind him at 6'6". Really like Norman Powell at 5'4". Should see closer to 30, 35 minutes. Has shot the ball really well the past 2 games he's been in, even in a low amount of minutes. Do expect those minutes to come up a bunch in these playoffs. It really does it for me on this side. It's not much interest besides Paul George and then Powell, and then you can take a shot on a guy like Reggie Jackson. Zubac is always worth a dart throw. It's just the minutes are capped around 25. Maybe he gets a little bit closer to 30, but Doc Rivers just doesn't seem to like to play him much. I think he had in this game against the Kings, he had 15 and 12, and then really didn't play much in the second half. The game kind of did blow out, but as we see, he's kind of been limited for the most part in his minutes wise. I mean, I do think we can expect to see maybe at least 5 more in the playoffs, but at 5'7", I don't think he gets to go there with Zubac. It's more of like a dart throw play. Same with Hartenstein. His prices come up. His minutes come up a bit just because it's the last few games of the season. They wanted to get him a little bit more run. He's always worth a shot just because he's a high point per minute guy, but you really need Zubac to get in foul trouble, and maybe this happens with him guarding Cat. Maybe they'll throw in Hartenstein a little bit more, even though Hartenstein's not the best defender. So I'd probably give the slight edge to Hartenstein in this spot, probably just because he'll be lower owned, and maybe Zubac will get in foul trouble. Always take a shot on a guy like Marcus Morris Sr. Has been playing terrible as of recently. Should see closer to 30 minutes, but if he's not hitting his shot, he's just worthless at 5'5". As I said, really like Powell at 5'4". And then the next guy you could look to would probably be Covington, 5'3". Should see, I'd say, closer to 25, 30 minutes. I think he's going to be the main guy guarding Anthony Edwards. He's probably the best defender on this side besides Paul George. So it'd be interesting to see what starting lineup they'll roll out with the Clippers, if they'll change it at all. I'm assuming Paul George will be on Anthony Edwards at the beginning, but if not, they'll definitely throw Covington out there for a bit to guard whoever they need him to guard. Last guy I mentioned is Luke Kennard. Should see, I'd say, about 25 minutes. They're going to need some scoring off the bench. I know Powell's been coming off the bench. Maybe they start him. 5'1's not the best price for him. Just a guy, I just want to mention just because he'll get a little bit of run. But obviously the main plays on the side are Paul George, Powell, and then taking a shot on a guy like Reggie Jackson, Hartenstein, maybe Marcus Morris, and Covington. Just nothing too great. I love in that spot for that side. The last side of the day, we have Towns, 10-3. Love him against the Clippers. Played 3 games this year. He's only averaged 15 points. Hasn't played too well. Hasn't shot the ball extremely well. But love him in the spot. Great matchup against Zubac. Should easily be able to destroy him. So I do really like Karl Towns. Anthony Edwards has been playing great recently. Only played 18 minutes against the Bulls. Was a worthless game, so don't worry about that. But before then, career high 49, 18, 33, 18, 24, 24. I think Paul George might be guarding him, which Paul George is a great defender. So I am a little suspect about this matchup for Anthony Edwards, but don't mind him at 8-3. Really like D'Lo at 7K. I do think we should see closer to 35, maybe even 40 minutes out of D'Lo. So that's a good price to get D'Lo at if he's seeing close to 40 minutes. Him and Towns are my favorite plays on the side. The secondary play would be Anthony Edwards. And then you could take a shot on a guy like Beasley, who would come off the bench, probably play closer to 25 minutes. They're going to need some scoring off the bench to, help them win this game. And if that happens, it's probably going to be a guy like Beasley who does it. Pat Beverly is a guy you could definitely take a shot on. They're going to use him a ton just for his defense, some high energy. Should see at least 30 minutes in this game. He's a little bit foul prone. He can get more. He's very intense, so he can definitely be more into, being an annoyance than scoring. But at 30, maybe 35 minutes in this game at 5-2, it's a price, he can easily pay off if he's hitting his threes. He's good at getting some steals, some assists, some rebounds, so I don't mind him at 5-2. Just my favorite plays on the side would be Russell, then Towns. Secondary would be Anthony Edwards, and then you could take the dart throw on a guy like Beasley or Beverly. And that really does it for me today. My core right now would I say be these three guys, and most likely Paul George. I think that's, Dragic is definitely risky, very risky, questionable. So maybe I'll give you guys one more. Do all games. We'll just throw in a guy like what this? Throwing a guy like D'Lo, and then do Paul George. Paul George only shooting guard, questionable. Where is Paul's only question? Oh, okay. So this is what I'm going to do for right now, just as my core. This might change later in the day. If it does, follow me on Twitter @HardTFS. And I'll see you guys later today for NBA Prize Picks video. Thank you guys. Peace.